Hey everyone, my name is Paul, and welcome to the 5th. If you are here because you want to be outraged, because you want your perspective forced, because you want to join a team and, well, this is probably not the channel for you. The 5th is going to evaluate and critically discuss topic for today. And we're living in a time that is difficult with violence, hateful rhetoric, vitriol, and I decided I wanted to do a little YouTube channel to talk a little bit about thoughts, and maybe the thoughts that I'm going to talk about will resonate a little bit with you. So a little bit about me. I went to Catholic high school in Denver, Colorado, and to some degree I'm a little bit envious that I was never able to really create a relationship with God. And despite the efforts that my parents put me through, or despite the efforts that my parents made to create that connection, it just didn't happen for me. My teenage years were kind of rebellious, and I was a 1980s punk rock. I wore my hair spiked and eyeliner, and I wore makeup. And I was really trying to piss some people off, to be quite honest. And my best friend Steve and I, we would sit in his room and play instruments and make up stupid songs and write poetry. And really, what we were trying to do was we were testing the limits of the world that we lived in. And back then, being a liberal thinker meant doing what you could to demonstrate that you were not following the mainstream way of thinking, that we were doing something different to put a wrench into the system. On my bedroom window, I had a coat hanger, wire coat hanger in the shape of the anarchy symbol. Just down the street, I stole a street sign, and I placed it at the corner of my giant waterbed. And I was listening to The Cure every day, and my favorite punk rock music, or my favorite new wave bands, and that was the world I grew up in. And we questioned things. We questioned authority. We questioned the mainstream narrative. What could we do to think about something differently? And that was the challenge that we all had in mind. And, we did that as kids, somewhat conforming to the other kids who were dressed up, spiked hair, eyeliner, black lipstick, black nails. But it was a way for us to somewhat categorize ourselves into a ideology that demonstrated that we were not going to think about things along the same lines that our parents were telling us about, and that the government was telling us about, and that's pretty much how we rolled back then. And as recently as I'd say 2 years ago, I was solidly rooted into the left-wing liberal way of thinking about things. And I believed the worst about conservatives because, once you are in a tribe, you tend to think along those lines. You don't really have too many opportunities to escape that ideology. Your friends think like you do. The TV shows you watch are designed to reflect your opinions, and you just kind of keep going along with that flow. You just keep thinking along the same lines that you grew up thinking you were supposed to think. I was a strict Democrat voter. I was very left-leaning, and conservatives really, in my perspective, had a bad reputation, a bad name, and to the point where they were downright evil. And I wrote those same Facebook posts that you're probably looking at today that are characterizing and classifying conservative and Republicans as Nazis, Trump as Hitler, and I was pushing forward that agenda. I believe that Republicans were racist, and I believe that Trump was pushing a fascist agenda, and I believe that anybody who followed Trump was a racist just like him. When Biden won, I was dancing on the tables, man. We were just super excited. Everybody in my group, all my friends, all my Facebook friends were just elated and putting up pictures, celebratory pictures. The end of fascism was here, damn it. We were all really, really happy to see this horrible administration finally depart. And especially after January 6th, where we were absolutely convinced that the right-wing Republicans and the conservatives were Hitler, Nazis, racist, and wanted to indoctrinate our country into a fascist state. We saw it with our own eyes, people charging through the doors of the Capitol, policemen getting squished and begging for their lives. And it was absolutely horrific. It was a horrible scene. And that really solidified my perspective that never again can we have Trump in the White House. Now today is September 13th, and just a few days ago, Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And that should be a wake-up call and a catalyst to make people like me reconsider their perspective, reconsider what it is you're actually rooting for. Did your ideology go off the path? Or are you still in a rut believing that the ideology that you have is righteous, that your righteousness trumps goodness? The terrifying thing about righteousness is that it allows you to justify evil. Nobody who has caused great harm to society, to the world, has ever believed that they weren't doing it for a good goddamn reason. That righteousness was on their side and that they had a principled motive to do the worst destruction that we've ever seen on our planet. I mean, Hitler, the Nazis, they believed that they were right. They believed that they were protecting the country from an evil. And their righteousness created the worst atrocity that this country has ever done. And I want you to think about that. So I have seen several reactions to Charlie Kirk's assassination, and most of them are really, really disturbing. There are 4 failed responses to Charlie Kirk's assassination. And the first response, on the surface, would seem to be the most moral and ethical response, which simply states that assassinations, murder is bad. And we cannot condone that irregardless of that person's character or the words that came out of that person's mouth. The second response, this one is a little bit more manipulative. This response says, killing is bad. And I pray for Charlie Kirk's family. I pray for his kids. I think this is a horrible thing to happen. But, and that is the key word, but, because now the justification to his murder is coming right up. But he put his head out. He put his neck out. He stuck his neck out. He said controversial things. He pissed people off. He was a racist. He was a homophobic. He was a misogynist. The list goes on. This group is giving permission to validate his murder, even though they've tried to put a little cherry on top and say that his murder was bad. But they don't really believe it. And they're giving themselves a way out, and they're giving you a way out to try to justify an evil for a righteous cause. The third response is a pure justification of that evil. Cheering for Charlie Kirk's murder, dancing in the streets, posting tweets, saying, "Thank God the witch is dead." This group believes that his death was a justification, that it was a good cause, that his death was for a valid reason, that the killer did it to save democracy, to improve the world, to make this place a better place by doing exactly the same thing that they've been terrified of for all these years, entering into a fascist authoritarian state which is designed to shut down speech through fear and hatred. Now, the fourth response is to play the tribal card. It's to try to find blame. Who's to blame? The left is to blame because they're radicalized, because they support unethical, anti-moral ideologies, because they're dancing in the streets, because the person who took the shot was a liberal, because he had a trans boyfriend. Okay, so they come up with a lot of great reasons to put blame on the opposite tribe, and the same thing goes for the left. And the left is playing this game just as cynically, trying to say that the shooter was a white male, and trying to say that, oh, white guys are crazy, right? Or trying to blame Trump for creating this division and hateful rhetoric. So everybody is trying to find somebody to blame in this highly polarized, but more specifically, I believe it's a highly tribalized society that we currently live in. Now, I believe that there is a fifth category, and this category is a little bit more tricky to identify, and it's a much more difficult one to accept. The fifth category is truly a liberal category. Now, immediately after Kirk's assassination, I was in a bad place, and I was really, really pissed off, and I really wanted to find somebody to blame for it. I was hurt that our society would do this to somebody. I thought about his kids and his wife. I remember watching him talk respectfully to students, and now I realize that he's no longer here. He's no longer around. And my anger escalated as I was watching videos of people cheering his death, people denouncing his character, people deliberately lying about what he said. And honestly, I was right there with most of you who are absolutely pissed off about what had happened. I was not there with you who agreed with what happened, because I guess some of my Catholic upbringing stuck, and thou shalt not kill, period. No, that's the end of the conversation. And when I saw people cheering in the streets, when I watched young men and young women applaud his death, it really makes me wonder what happened to the left. What happened to, not the left, but what happened to liberals? What happened to liberalism? What happened to the ability to think critically, to think outside of outside the box, to go down a different path and start thinking about what is going on, what happened, who motivated this killer to assassinate an innocent person. And my son came to me the other day. He came to me yesterday. And he asked me, he said, "Dad, I was in my choir church, and the minister, I noticed he did exactly what you said would happen. He said that death is wrong, killing is wrong, assassinating somebody is wrong." He prayed to the families, and then he followed up with that word, but. His misogyny, his racism, his transphobic and homophobic rhetoric triggered people to go to violence. And I was really disappointed with what I heard. And he asked me, what do I think? What do I think about what they said? Was he a misogynist? Was he racist? Was he homophobic? And I tried to put into perspective some of the arguments that Charlie Kirk had. I tried to show him where I agree with him. I tried to demonstrate where I disagree with him. But I explained to him that there is really there's no moral justification for assassination. I don't care how somebody feels about him. We live in a country where free speech is prized above almost anything else in our culture. And it is wrong to try to silence somebody who is attempting to open up a line of communication, especially with kids. And one of the things I found interesting is that during his conversation with the kids at school, I shouldn't call them kids, they're young adults, was that he challenged them. And specifically, one of the more interesting arguments that he had was that college is a scam. As a college graduate myself, the first time I heard him say that, I thought that's absolutely fucking bullshit. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. College was the most enlightening, eye-opening experience that I had the pleasure to enjoy. I received several degrees in college. I have an engineering degree, and I have a teaching degree, and I was a teacher as a result. But when he came to the table, and when those students were challenged with that college is a scam, I started to believe him, and not because of what he said about college, not because because his claim was that college is making you take classes that you don't need, because a lot of those classes that you don't need stuck in my head and shaped my perspective and shaped values, and also provided me with better opportunities to communicate with people and build a business that I could be proud of. But what I found interesting wasn't so much his argument, but the way that these students responded to his criticism of college. And the fact was that I saw time and time again that most students were not able to critically analyze his argument. They weren't able to demonstrate where they saw college as a value for them. Perhaps Kirk was right that college is drifting too far away from actually trying to create critical thinking and instead focusing more on following a line of thought and just basically creating a rut that is aimed in a specific direction. A rut of thinking. I explained to my son those 4 perspectives. The first perspective, meaning absolutely under no circumstances is murder justification for political differences or speech differences. The second perspective, again, is adding that but after condemning a murder. And that third rationale, basically applauding the murder. And then the fourth one is trying to create a tribal environment where we're blaming either side and nobody wins. And instead I explained to my son that the thing that really counts, the thing that really matters here, is that we all accept personal responsibility for what happened. Because Charlie Kirk is dead, and he's not going to be able to do anything else from here on out. And it's up to me, it's up to him, and it's up to you to change the world that we live in. And we need to take responsibility for what happened to him. It doesn't matter what side you're on. If you're that side that is jumping up and down and cheering for his demise, yeah, you're responsible. Absolutely. And I think you admittedly submit that you are responsible. You were able to drive enough people to have hatred in their hearts to murder a father of 2 children and a wife. If you're on that side that creates the justification with the but, you're also responsible because you're sitting on your hands. You're not doing anything. He's saying something you disagree with. Maybe you give a little prod here and there, but you're providing permission for the rest of the world to not do anything different. You're shrugging off your responsibility for having created a world that is justifying a killing. That's you. That's on you. And then the other one the first response, which basically says that all killing is wrong. Well, that's we know that. Okay? You're not telling us anything new for the most part. Most of us pretty much already know that killing is wrong, but then you're going to go ahead and go into your camp and blame the other side, and therefore you're not doing anything too much differently in that you are allowing yourself to displace any responsibility. I'm not at fault. I think killing is bad. It's their fault. Okay? And the fact of the matter is that we all live in this society together. We all contribute to the way people think. We all contribute to the way people live. And we are all responsible for the world that we are creating. You may think you're a drop in the bucket, and you are, but that drop in the bucket is surrounded by other drops in the bucket. And we can influence, and we can dialogue, and we can make changes to create the environment that we want to live in. And by trying to blame other people, or by trying to cheer for the demise of somebody, or trying to give justification and permission for a murder, well, we can all take that responsibility onto ourselves and say we can do better, and we should have done better. And what can we do differently in the future? When I go online and I see some stupid comment and I reply with another stupid comment, I insult, I create that anger and that vitriol. I'm not perfect. I can't help it. I'm responsible. Okay, I just pissed off another person. And that person is pissed off at me, and they think that I'm a MAGA supporter, and they think that I'm racist, and they think I'm a part of a cult. And now I basically, through insulting that individual, have strengthened his position that my camp is inherently evil and that something needs to be done, something needs to change. And then that person is going to make sure that he pisses somebody off as much as I pissed him off. And so I'm responsible for that. And so are you. Because I'm sure you've done exactly what I am saying I've done. There's not too many people out there that say, "Oh, peace be with you, and I love you, and I don't care if you believe this or not. I still think you're a wonderful human being, and thank you for this dialogue, and thank you for this conversation." And the fact is that really the only person who was kind of doing that was Charlie Kirk. People disagree with him. And after the disagreement, he said, "Thanks for the dialogue. I appreciate your conversation. Thanks for coming up. I need to move on to the next person." Almost every time. So in a sense, what he was trying to do was open up those lines of communication, maintain a respectful communication, maintain a respectful distance, and stay true to his message, while at the same time allowing another person to communicate their message, irregardless of how much vitriol they spewed towards him, no matter how much hate they spewed towards him. He handled it like a professional. And so the person that really wasn't responsible for his death was him. He was the only one I can think of that was really trying to establish and initiate a change in how we communicate with each other, so that we don't do it with anger and we don't do it with vitriol. But we're going to go out anyway, and we're going to post things like he's a racist, he's a misogynist, he's a homophobe. And that is disappointing, to say the least. And that is the responsibility that we can all accept. Because somebody calls him a racist, somebody calls him a homophobe, the other side is going to say, you're a libtard, you're evil, you're the problem, you're vitriol, you're calling people Nazis, you're the reason why this country is the way it is. And so we all get to share in that anger and in that hate. And the reality is that Charlie Kirk did not die because of the things that he said. He died because of the things that you said. And right now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to cure a sore throat by cutting our throats out. We're trying to remove that pain by making it worse. We're trying to increase tensions. We're trying to prove our point. We're trying to show that you're the bad guy, I'm the good guy, you're evil, I'm good, you deserve to be punished. And dehumanization goes both ways, and we're all guilty of it. And I created a chart on my Facebook page. I posted it, and it's designed to make the left take a harder look at their rhetoric. And I can easily switch it up to make the right take the same look at their rhetoric, but at the moment, the right is mourning the loss of somebody that they really admired. The right is holding prayers and meetings and marching and just trying to demonstrate that they are sorry for the loss of somebody who had influenced them to think a little bit differently. And so my point is that I think the right now has been punished enough through his death, and I think that the left needs to take a little bit harder look at what they're doing. It's a flow chart that asks, are you a Nazi? I'll bring up the flowchart for you here. And I did a lot of research on this flowchart to try to demonstrate that a lot of the things that we all do are very much in alignment with 1930s Germany, Nazis. And I'm not suggesting that the left are Nazis, and I'm certain that the right are also not Nazis. But simply, if you're going to throw the word around, you really need to evaluate how you are behaving, and in a very authoritarian way. Simply, the first question, can you change your mind on Facebook? Can you reflect on the ideas that you had? Can you go back a few posts and say, that was a really fucking stupid thing that I just said? And maybe I'll delete that post. Do you do that? Or do you just leave it there because you want to try to piss people off? Because you want to get those likes, and you want to get those shares, and you want to get those comments and that feedback? Because that makes you feel good. Makes you feel like, hey, my camp likes me. My tribe supports what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to be a complete jackass, and I'll just leave that stupid post up because people seem to respond to it. I get that. I understand that. That's how media is working today. They love the interaction. They need eyeballs on their ads. They need feedback. They need you to click on their shit and either flame or support. They don't care one way or the other how you react, as long as you react. That's their thing. That's what they want. So the next question then asks if you believe that Charlie Kirk is a misogynist or a racist. And this basically is designed to suggest that language is specifically in place to dehumanize him. We do that a lot today, especially on social media. So we call if you're on the left, you're going to categorize people as MAGA, or in a cult, or fascist, or authoritarian, or racist. And all of these things are designed to remove the humanity from that person that you disagree with, so that in the future, if that person gets hurt, that person gets harmed, you can justify it, and you can forget it, and you don't have to take responsibility for what happened. And I suppose, just to be fair, the right is doing that, especially in cases of immigration. They call people who are crossing the border as illegals instead of people that are not here legally. And language does matter. Language matters. And the Republicans or the conservatives made a big to-do about political correctness. And the fact is that now that it's aimed at them being Nazis, being Hitler, that's not politically correct, and then they're hurt. So, think about that. Think about those things. So there's an attempt to dehumanize, and that is right out of the Nazi playbook. Dehumanize, and you won't get too much pushback if you do something cruel and evil. I'm going to shoot Charlie Kirk. No pushback from the left right now, or very, very little pushback. I don't want to say no. I've seen a lot of people on the left really start to reevaluate what the hell is going on and basically say, I don't want to be a part of this ideology if this is what's going to happen. And so I'm here to hopefully suggest that there's a new ideology. The next question on this is Trump a fascist? Is he out to destroy democracy? And an answer in the affirmative is, again, right out of the playbook. And it's you being fearful for your well-being. And that is a very, very powerful thing, which really starts to push people over the edge. Germans were extremely fearful of the Jews, believing that the Jews were ruining the system that they were living in, that they were causing people to lose their livelihoods, that they were stealing jobs, and that they were bad for the country that they lived in. And the first Jew that got killed, well, that was fantastic because the Jews terrified the Germans. So fear, one of the strongest motivators to commit evil, because you're taking your moral superiority, combining that with fear, and assassination triggers zero regret. And therefore, the last question is it justifiable? Is the murder justifiable? If the answer is yes, well, then congratulations, you're a Nazi. And we can use this flowchart for just about anything. And the beauty of America, the beauty of this country, is that we tend to stop things before they get too far down that flowchart. We have elections every 4 years. So if you're terrified of that person being a Nazi, you're afraid that that person's out to destroy your country, well, if enough people are terrified of that, we're going to vote somebody else in, and the fears are gone. So the country survives, and now the other group has 4 years to build up the same animosity and fears in their heart, and then we get to vote for somebody else. So the system is designed to balance those fears against results, and hopefully we don't do anything incredibly stupid, because this is just the start of Trump's 4 years in office. And these fears and this hatred and this resentment could potentially lead to a third term. Enough people feel justified in believing that the left has gone out of control, and you never know what's going to happen, right? So check yourselves. And if the right does that, or the Republicans do that, then the system changes, and we're all in a worse spot for it. Because if we remove those term limits, if we remove those restrictions, then we all get to live with that consequence, right? Who knows who's in office next and how long that person will be in there? Maybe we'll have a Xi Jinping or a Kim Jong-un. You never know, right? Just stupid. Just stupid. Control your behavior. Take some responsibility. Check what you say online. In 2017, I had a job in a middle school. I was a middle school science teacher. And my classroom erupted in sobs and tears when Trump got elected. Especially the Hispanic students. A lot of them stayed home because they were afraid for their friends and their family. They're believing that all of a sudden they'd be deported out of the country. The teachers that I worked with were primarily liberal, were primarily Democrats and liberal, and including myself. Except for one teacher, and she was a history teacher in my team, and she had been teaching for God knows how long. she was one of those teachers that were hardened against anything that could possibly get screwed up in the system. She knew how to walk that system. She knew how to deal with parents, and she was a great teacher and actually a wonderful human being, which surprised me because I had learned that she voted for Trump, and I was like, what the... But I was still a liberal. At least I thought I was a liberal. I wasn't entirely left. And I handled her admission to this almost as though she was coming out of the closet. And I asked her why she had voted the way she voted. Her reasons aren't important. What was important was how she treated me. She treated me with kindness and respect and compassion. And one day we had a huge snowstorm and a blizzard, and I'd rode my motorcycle to school that day. In hindsight, that was kind of stupid because they said it was going to snow. I was still on my motorcycle. I love that thing. But all the other teachers, knowing that I was there on my motorcycle, just took off. And she was the only one left grading papers at the end of the day. And I said, geez, I am so glad you're still here. I'm on my motorcycle and there's no way I'm getting home tonight. And she lived in the opposite direction from me, probably another 30 minutes. And I lived maybe 45 minutes to home, and she took me home. I won't forget that. That was just a really nice display of kindness after I had talked to her about her politics. And she was really kind of I wouldn't say she was afraid to talk about her politics, but she was hesitant because everybody there in the break room were all Democrats, and they were all talking about how terrified their poor kids were, and that students were crying, and people were just up in arms about Trump's election. And to some extent, her kindness made me reflect on my perspective of Trump voters. I mean, after Hillary Clinton had called all the people on the Republican side a basket of deplorables because they followed and agreed with Trump's message, I was right there with her. Oh my God, these people are all fucking crazy. And when I met her, I had to reassess that. I had to reevaluate my assessment because she was not crazy. She was kind. She was warm. She was a decent human being, and she was a fantastic teacher, and her kids loved her. That's not a crazy person. And then I started finding that my more reactionary posts on Facebook were being addressed in two ways. First was all my fans, all my supporters who loved what I had to say, give me thumbs up, heart emojis, telling me, I love what you're saying, the Republicans are crazy, these people are evil, and they're mean, and they're da-da-da-da. You know, the list went on and on about the vitriol that they could express in support of what I had wrote about a particular topic, whether it be gun violence or abortion or whatever. And I found that I was being challenged more and more by conservatives because I had a lot of people in my friends list. And the conservative pushback was always surprisingly respectful. Not always, mostly respectful. Challenging my position, challenging my opinion, trying to provide me with a different perspective without the name calling, without the hatred, without the vitriol. And all of my fans, all of my followers just jumped down their throats and beat them into submission with their anger and their accusations and their rage and their words of disgust, calling them, racists, homophobes, misogynists. And while I really loved the support, I enjoyed that support, I kind of started thinking a little bit more. These people were not addressing my posts with the anger and the hate that I was expecting them to. They were, again, respectful, communicative, trying to get me to change my mind, but in a respectful way, not calling me an idiot or not calling me a libtard or, I tend to write more reflective, longer posts that actually argued a position and not just condemned or criticized. So I did open a door to a conversation, but, they were kind of snarky, I'll admit. And then a few years go by and COVID happens. And I villainized anybody who didn't wear a mask. And I villainized anybody who refused to get their vaccines. I had 3 vaccinations myself. Made sure I was single, double, triple vaxxed. And my ex-wife told me that the vaccine that she had received almost killed her. And I thought, oh, you're overreacting. And she's my ex. So it's like, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. Despite the fact that my ex-wife was very liberal, more liberal than I am. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay, I listened, but I thought, I'm sure it's probably a number of different factors that, that she's not taking into account, and that vaccinations are good, and there's no way in hell I was going to share her story with the rest of the world and rethink my position on that. No way in hell. Because, the people who wore masks and the people who got vaxxed, they were liberals and left-wingers, and that's who I was, and that's the agenda I'm going to push come hell or high water. And then my ex-wife came to me again, and she said that her job fired her because she refused to get a second shot. And she was afraid for her life, and she had heart palpitations from that first one. She had an irregular heartbeat. She had to go to the emergency room. The kids confirmed what had happened to her in the ER, and they were terrified for the life of her mother. And she was terrified. And she lost her job because of the refusal to get a vaccine. Now, fast forward, my new wife and I, we were triple vaxxed, and we went to Las Vegas, and we both came home with COVID. And we were both sick for 2 weeks, and we both lost our sense of smell and taste. And I was having a hard time breathing. I had asthma, and I was just constantly running to the bathroom to take the inhalers and laying on my stomach. My ex-wife says, lay on your stomach if you find that you're having a difficult time breathing. Use your watch, check your O2 levels, make sure that your O2 levels are above 92%. And I was a little bit scared, and I was triple vaxxed. And I was sick with COVID. A few years later, or another year after that, I got it again. So much for my religious belief in those vaccines, and my judgment of people who oppose the vaccines very quickly eroded. So, like a good liberal who tries to carve a different path in the dialogue, I started pushing back a little bit on the left-wing ideology, starting with what people were terrified of during Biden. Oh, and we loved the fact Biden got elected. That was a wonderful day for us, and we partied, we cheered. Everybody was really, really happy. And then we all got sick. But now with Biden in office, nothing more to worry about, right? And I was a little pissed off after Hillary won the Democratic ticket, because I wanted Bernie to win, and technically he did, and he should have won. But the Democrats told me that Hillary was the candidate they wanted, so that was the person I had to vote for. And I didn't regret voting for her, but as soon as she was the nominee, I basically admitted that that's the end of that's the end of the Democrats' opportunity. Biden is going to, or Trump is going to win. And so when Biden won, it was just a huge relief. Oh, thank God. we were just so happy that fascist is out of the office. And 2 years into his term, though, it seemed as though the fear tactics, the fear mongering by all my favorite TV networks, CNN, MSNBC, Comedy Central. I watched The Daily Show. That fear-mongering wasn't going anywhere. We were all terrified that Trump was going to destroy the world, that Trump was going to ruin democracy. And we are so happy that Biden is now in office, but it didn't stop. And 2 years after that, we had the midterm elections, and the red wave was supposed to come in. And every liberal was terrified about the Republicans coming into power in the House and the Senate. And the media was constantly hitting that red alarm button over and over again. I just got sick of hearing about how the Republicans would block everything that Biden would ever want to do, and how we needed to spread the word of fear and hate, and the Republicans were still an organization to be afraid of. And so I posted a little Facebook message that made fun of that, putting a big red button and a aviation warning, pull up, like you're going to crash. It's an emergency. Get thee to the voting booth. Basically pointing out the hypocrisy and the fear-mongering from the constant media attention to this. And what I was surprised at was, here I was offering kind of a nuanced, kind of a funny little perspective about how the media tries to keep us engaged in politics through this constant barrage of fear. But I was really surprised that the pushback I received from the left was so aggressive. I don't think I remembered ever being pushed out of a tribe so quickly in my life. And basically it was you better watch your ass, because if you don't, you're out of here. And that actually kind of motivated me a little bit. I wanted to push a little bit harder, because I was getting a little pissed off at these comments that were very much trying to intimidate me to change my thinking into something different, that I should be afraid, that I should be hateful. And I found myself slowly changing my perspective a little bit as I was getting forced out of this rut of thinking by my friends, by my peers. And then when Trump was removed from the ballot from several states, this really got me to raise an eyebrow. We are accusing Trump of being a fascist, but don't fascists remove people from the election? Don't they try to shut them up? And that didn't make any sense to me. That did not sit right with me. And I did not want Trump in office. I was very, very opposed to him winning this, but if we were going to remove him from a ballot, how does that sit with the rest of this country? How does that make us the good guys? And I was kind of amazed at how many people were like, yeah, take him off the ballot. He doesn't deserve, or he's evil. He denies, he's an election denier, and everybody was all of a sudden election deniers, And I kind of was starting to think, how does taking him off the ballot support your accusation that he's an election denier? Doesn't this actually make election denial a little bit more valid? Because you're taking him off the ballot. That to me was really surprising. I was like, and so I put that post up, and now by this time I'm no longer welcome among my friends, my peers. They came down on me like a ton of bricks, spewing hatred and anger, and you just want to see the end of this country, and you want to see a racist in office, and you want to see da-da-da-da. It was absolutely fucking insane. I couldn't believe the types of reactions that I was getting. But I figured since I was kind of already out of the camp anyway, I might as well just keep going with this and keep challenging people to change their perspective a little bit on some of the things that they're doing in the name of liberalism. Put that in air quotes. Including cheering for him, or not cheering for him, but cheering for his conviction when he was found guilty in a court of law. And I've never seen so much partying in my life. I mean, here people were just like flipping over cars and dancing on the streets and shooting off fireworks, and yay, our country looks like shit. Love Trump or hate Trump, he was our president. And by convicting your president of a crime, that's kind of a shitty thing to happen. And in my opinion, that was a opportunity to mourn. And that might have carried more weight if, the left mourned this, because honestly, this makes us look like shit. Like our country is stupid. Like we don't know how to run our country. We don't know how to elect a good president. And we're going to celebrate that fact. I thought that was about the most ignorant thing people could do. And so I posted that. Now, of course, I'm fully right-wing MAGA Republican because I'm criticizing the left's joy at having a felon for a president. Well, this went on and on. And what I've heard this a lot. People say that they didn't leave the left left them. Try saying that 10 times. And it's true. I still consider myself a liberal thinker. I try not to continue down that worn path of ideology and thought. It's one of the reasons why I couldn't find my way to religion, to believing in God. For me, that was just seeing a one-way street to morality and ethics, and I wanted to be able to think for myself. And I'm not suggesting that people who are religious don't think for themselves. I'm not suggesting that religion isn't incredibly dynamic, because it is, and I respect the hell out of it. And I've learned to respect it more and more, especially after listening to some of Kirk, to be quite honest with you. I didn't realize how deep the philosophy went and how eye-opening it was. And I started respecting the fact that despite my refusal to be religious, the values that I have, the values that I carry, the values that I have about the West, about this country, what's good, what's bad, what's evil, what's not, these are all values that were based on Christian beliefs. So, in a way, I can't escape it. And one of the values that I believe we really, really need to focus on making a priority in this country is the value of speech, the value of perspective, the value of true liberalism, to open a dialogue of disagreement, because disagreement is where solutions are found. A change in perspective is good. One thing Kirk said that I really didn't agree with was that he believed that diversity was a weakness and that unity is a strength. And yes, unity can be a strength, but so can diversity. Different perspectives, different values, a different way to see the world around you, a different way of understanding human behavior, human nature. These are all valuable things that we can get from society. I think about fields of grass blowing in the wind and how all those blades of grass blow in unity back and forth like a wave, and it's beautiful. This is unity. This is everything moving together as one efficient unit. And it's beautiful to look at. Or even an army marching in a parade down the street with legs kicking up and arms going in motion, and those white gloves saluting all at the same time. It's really a wonderful thing to look at. And there's a certain strength, and there is a power behind that. And then I also look at a beautiful view of the mountains in Colorado here, with aspen trees and pine trees and changing leaves and mountains and rocks and rivers and streams and roads and birds. And I look at that diversity in nature where almost everything doesn't exactly fit together as one complete unit. Nothing is harmonizing together, yet at the same time it is harmony, and it's beautiful. And we can learn a lot from that diversity, as well as we can learn a lot from unity and togetherness. Aligning perspective takes effort. It takes strength. It takes power. It takes courage. And it's important that we as a nation, as a people, that we look to find commonality with other people, because ultimately we all want exactly the same thing. We want good outcomes. We want happiness. We want success. We want our kids to grow old in an environment that's safe, secure, and prosperous. We all want that. Conservatives, liberals, left-wing, right-wing, we all want goodness. It's just a different path. Consider Google Maps. You want to go from point A to point B. The destination's the same. The route is different. One route may be heavy traffic and ugly scenery, but goes really, really fast. The other route might be going through the neighborhoods, and it's slower, but there's no traffic. Another route might be along a twisty, winding road that's beautiful and slow, but it's fun, and time might pass faster for you because you want to take that trip instead of the trafficy one. They all lead to the same destination. And depending on which route you want to go on, I want to take route A, that other person wants to go on route C. Does that warrant an assassination? No. Does that maybe earn a little bit of your respect and consideration? Why take that route? Why is that good for them? What can we learn from the direction that person wants to go? So which of those four categories are you in? Are you in the first category? Do you assign blame? Are you in that second category? Do you think it's bad, but? Are you in the third category where you're cheering the assassination of an innocent person? And the more important question is, can you exist with comfort in that fifth category and take the blame onto your shoulders? Can you admit your responsibility in the failure of communication in this country? Can you go back on those Facebook posts, on those replies, on that vitriol, on the anger that you have, and say, I share a little bit in what happened. I share a little bit in the polarization of this country. Part of that's my fault. Can you do that? Do you have the strength? Do you have the courage? Honestly, I don't all the time. Blaming is so much easier. It's so much more fun. It's so fucking difficult to say that I'm at fault and I shouldn't have done that and I need to change my perspective. Get out of that rut. You have worn a rut in your brain. Your synapses don't know how to change directions, but you can be smarter than your biology, and you can make that change if you choose to. And if we make that change together and we tried to be a little bit more accommodating of differing opinions, then maybe we can make something better of where we live, our community, our families, our friends. Have a conversation with someone you disagree with. Present your point of view. Give them your perspective. Listen to what they have to say to you. Get off of Facebook. Get off of social media. Stop watching those programs that are designed to just piss you off. And start getting out and talking to people. You may be surprised with what you hear. Anyway, I'm rooting for you, and I'm rooting for this country. And if you like what you heard, you can subscribe. You can stick a like in there. I'd really love to hear your feedback, though. I want to know what you think. What category are you in? How do you feel about going into that fifth category? Can you accept responsibility for your own involvement in our society? What would you like to see happen? Please leave that feedback. I want to have that conversation, and I hope you do too. Thanks for watching The Fifth. My name is Paul, and I enjoyed our conversation. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Questions fall.